Well, it's here. The game we've all been waiting for. Payday 3. Did it live up to expectations we all had? No, and so far, almost everything that could go wrong has gone wrong. If you're just wondering if I recommend the game or not, then I suggest reading the title of this video. The contents of this video will be a deep dive into every aspect of Payday 3, as well as look into the reception of the game and what went wrong. Let's just get started, why not? Payday 3 is a game that killed itself before launch so many times that I can't even count. But hell, I'll try. The first nail in Payday 3's coffin were the pre-order editions. I don't really have anything against pre-ordering, but the Payday 3 pre-orders were horrendous. There were 4 versions you could pre-order. Just the regular version, which is a bog-standard pre-order. You pay $40 for the game early, and when it releases, you can play it. There's also an outfit that comes with this version, but it's such a small thing that it isn't even worth considering. Your next option for $70 is the Silver Edition. This version comes with the Standard Edition outfit, but also one whole entire extra mask. Yeah, no one cares about the mask here. The only important part of this version is that you can play the game 3 days early. This is a very enticing deal, and we'll get back to this one later. Additionally, you also get 6 months of DLC for free. Well, for $30 up front, and without knowledge of how much the DLC will cost. But it's almost free, if you close your eyes and pretend at least. For a whopping 90 Freedom Dollars, your next option is the Gold Edition, coming with everything from the Silver Edition and more. You get an additional 6 months of DLC, a pair of gloves, and a whole entire mask. Again! These were all the PC pre-orders, but that's not all there were. On console, you had the option to get the Collector's Edition for the sky-high $130. This version is a physical box with a bunch of stuff in it, including a real mask you can wear. But in terms of the game, it comes with one more mask, and the lack of being able to play the game early. Arguably, the biggest benefit of the Silver and Gold editions was this play early part, and the most expensive edition of the game doesn't even have it. Not that it matters, on which I'll elaborate later. Now technically there's a 5th pre-order version, the Day 1 edition for consoles. However, I'm not sure this one even exists, as I don't have a console, nor did I even see people talking about this version online. This sheer amount of pre-orders is not a good thing for the game. You're being siphoned into spending more for almost no value aside from being able to try the game early. That's realistically the only benefit of these pre-orders. The next nail to be hammered in was the discovery of a premium currency, Payday credits. These were leaked to the public, and Starbreeze fessed up that they were indeed a real part of the game. Even though Starbreeze said, "It's only for cosmetics, we promise," people were not happy. When microtransactions were added during CrimeFest 2015, it was a massive disaster that left a mark on Payday 2's review page forever. And for some reason, totally not greed, Starbreeze wanted to give microtransactions a second try. Payday 3 was a game that you could pay money for, then pay for the DLC, and then pay for a special currency. The greed is visible through and through, and it's not shocking that people's hopes were falling. To add more frustration, we found this out before we even saw any gameplay of the fucking game. Can you imagine that? Knowing there are 3 different monetization methods in a game you haven't seen. As of making this video, Payday credits are not yet in the game, but we know they are coming. Some of the cosmetics related to them have also been leaked, as well as their prices. So what's the holdup? Well, the speculation is that they haven't been added yet to prevent negative reviews, and will be added later once the initial reviews are good. Yeah, so about that. Nail number 3 was the Steam requirements page. As it turns out, Payday 3 will require a strong-ass PC to run. Payday 2 could be run on a Game Boy Advance SP if you really wanted to, what with the in-game settings, renderer settings, optimization mod, patches, etc. And if you enjoy playing Payday 2 and want to play Payday 3, well, get yourself a stronger machine or suffer. Now, yes, games are getting bigger and more demanding. That's just a rule with big releases, but that doesn't justify much. Here are the specs of my PC, way above the minimum and even recommended requirements of Payday 3. And yet, even on medium settings, the frame rate jumps around. I can have 180 one second, 140 the next, 110 the next, and then back to 180. Personally, as long as it's consistently over 100, I'm fine. The jumps are noticeable, but it's not that big a deal. However, what would playing the game be like on a weaker machine? The thoughts of not even being able to play Payday 3 were understandably concerning. Nail number 4 was the most lethal of them all. Payday 3 will be always online. This means you always have to connect to an external server if you want to play. No internet, no video game. But that's just one problem with always online. What if you couldn't play the game even if you had internet? Well, that's how it's going to be. This isn't speculation. An always online game will eventually go offline once it's not worth it to keep the servers running. Just recently, Payday Crime War announced its shutdown. This is a mobile game in which players fought each other online. A nice time waster from my experience, but not something I'd play actively, and certainly not something I'd pay for in the form of the in-game microtransactions. Seems I wasn't the only one, because after about 4 months, PopReach announced that the game would be shut down. Crime War is gone, and unless there's an offline mode added to Payday 3, the same fate awaits. So what exactly is the point of Always Online? Apparently, it would stop cheating and piracy. Well, there are plenty of cheaters you can find with a simple YouTube search, and here are instructions on abusing a Microsoft Store weakness to pirate Payday 3. They're in Russian, because of course they are, but that's not the point. Pirates could play the game just fine with players who paid for the game and in the same lobby. Yes, there really isn't anything separating these groups of players. The online only failed as an anti-cheat, as well as an anti-piracy spectacularly. But the fun doesn't stop here, because the Always Online is paired with the dedicated servers, instead of the peer-to-peer of both the Heist and 2. I'll go more into detail on this later. The last thing to note about the Always Online was the inclusion of Denuvo Anti-Tamper. This addition would allegedly be the death of modding at the cost of piracy prevention, but I say allegedly because Denuvo was pulled from the game 1 day before launch. You may think that this is a good thing, but I saw it as the opposite. A big decision like this is an indication that the game isn't 100% ready for launch, and looking back, it obviously wasn't. This brings me to my thesis statement per se, which is that Payday 3 is an unfinished game, and was pushed way before it was ready to release for one reason or another. So many of the issues I'll continue discussing could have been prevented if the game was simply delayed. Trust me, a delay of a couple months or even a year is a much better alternative to what actually went down, which was Payday 3 breaking the list of Steam's 50 worst rated games. That was a list of the issues that were rearing their fugly heads before the game was even visible to the public, but then we did get a view of the game. In fact, we got 2 betas. The first beta was a closed beta, meaning not everyone could get in. I didn't play it, but I heard good things about the game despite it having only one playable heist. But hey, it's a beta. It obviously isn't going to have all the content. Then came the second beta, this time an open beta. The purpose was to stress test the servers, and stress test the community did. The servers went down within hours of the beta going live. Everyone was overlooking those looming problems from pre-launch because they got their hands on the game, and it was fun. Now, all that was left was waiting for the full release. September 18th rolled around, the date on which people with the silver and gold pre-orders could play the game. Everyone loved it, everything was great. Payday 3 is Game of the Year, nothing could possibly go wrong now. And then 3 days later, the floodgates opened to the non-pre-order players. The servers were so overloaded that the game was unplayable for days. Unsurprisingly, the stress test did fuck all. The beta released only on Steam and reached a maximum concurrent player count of about 35,000. The public release made Payday 3 the highest selling game on Steam for a while, hitting concurrent player numbers of almost 80,000. If that wasn't absurd enough, the game was cross-platform. I don't know how to get any numbers, but add in PlayStation players, Xbox players, Switch players, and those on Game Pass, and you can see that the player numbers could easily approach several 100,000. All the while the servers were burning down and nobody could play the game, the Payday Twitter was, well, dealing with the fallout. People began to question why there was no offline mode at all, because the game was literally unplayable. Hours of shitstorms later, the Twitter account announced that the issues were fixed and the servers were back online, only to go down again, almost immediately. This up and down kept going, and going, and going. The servers were foobar, and Starbreeze put out an apology blaming their server provider. I don't know exactly what happened to these servers, but I don't think anybody was shocked that they were insufficient. More pressure was applied to Starbreeze. Why is there no offline mode at all? Why was the old and perfectly good CrimeNet matchmaking removed? What was the point of the stress test beta? All of these are perfectly valid questions from people who couldn't play the game they paid for, and really, anyone could have seen this coming except for Starbreeze themselves apparently. I mean really, even Helen Keller saw this coming. And if you know something about Helen Keller, it's that she's dead. Problem after problem after problem showed up in the game, but there were still problems outside of the game. Remember when I was talking about the Collector's Edition lacking the ability to play early, but it not mattering that much anyway? Well, that's because the Collector's Editions were simply not shipping to people who ordered them. Apparently, Amazon just ran out of stock, and Plyon, the company handling distribution, was just not sending any more. And so, the delivery dates for people's orders were delayed, and delayed, and delayed. Some people even got emails that they were simply not going to get their Collector's Edition at all, and you can imagine how frustrating that was. What was Starbreeze doing about it? Nothing, they had no info.
We do not know, unfortunately. It might be the case where they have asked you to purchase it or allowed you to purchase it while they don't have any actual collector's editions in stock, and they are now, for whatever reason, unable to fulfill that order. That might be one of the reasons why you're experiencing that.
Fantastic. But hey, if you still want a collector's edition, feel free to pay scalpers. Was there anyone who wasn't fucked over with this launch? Even sick children in hospitals were fucked over. There was a charity stream for St. Jude Children's Hospital a couple days after Payday 3's launch. What was supposed to be a hype train of donations following the launch of a supermassive game turned into a frustrated crowd of people wondering why they should spend more money, since they'd already been robbed of $40 on the game itself. Oh yeah, and the streamer couldn't even get into a game for the majority of the stream since the servers were down. Unsurprisingly, the donation goal was not met. Surprisingly, there were still more people screwed over. The Roblox game Notoriety was DMCA'd by Starbreeze. This game was up for years just fine until Payday 3 was about to release, and someone at Starbreeze higher up thought that I guess they were losing out on massive revenue from this game existing, so they took it down. Was it similar to the Payday games? Yeah, obviously, but this is a game that people worked hard on and other people enjoyed because they didn't have the real thing. So now Starbreeze got so many more customers, right? No, I'd bet they all either pirated the Payday games or just didn't touch it again. Nice work, Starbreeze. The game that was winning awards left and right for the most hyped game of the year was flooded with justified negative reviews, and whatever positive reviews there were tended to be memes. Payday 3 bottomed out at a shocking score of 31% positive reviews. This launch was so bad that even massive creators outside of the Payday sphere were getting in on the action. But if you think this is the end of the problems, you're mistaken. When people could get into the game, they were frustrated with the atrocious leveling systems, lack of features, nebulous syncing issues, character model and voice changes, and countless other problems. But luckily, Starbreeze had a patch ready to fix over 200 bugs, and it was coming very soon. And then it was split into 2 updates because it wouldn't fit in one. And then the entire thing was delayed. Do you see what I mean by this game wasn't ready to release? The stress testing wasn't sufficient, the collector's edition fiasco was unorganized, and even the bug fixing was not completable on time. If you were unlucky enough to be playing on the PlayStation version of the game, you even ended up paying for the beta rather than the full game. As far as I understand, this was a mistake on Sony's end rather than Starbreeze, but it sure didn't help the situation. This gargantuan disaster of a launch might have not even happened if Payday 3 was released in early 2024, or even later. These problems could have been ironed out, but weren't. I'll keep pointing out these deficiencies that simply shouldn't exist in a finished game as we continue on to the next section of this video, actually analyzing the game itself. Let's start with the settings, since they have the least impact on the game. If there's one thing to complain about right away that is really, and I mean really minor, there seems to be a limiter of sorts on changing settings. I don't really know why you can't click through these settings as fast as your heart desires, and I doubt it bothers anyone else, but it did annoy me a bit. There are accessibility features for color blindness, which is good. This is something that was missing from Payday 2, and although it doesn't help me in particular, these are just good features to have. In user interface, some more issues come out. First off, subtitles. The problem isn't the subtitles being an option, the problem is that the subtitles aren't outlined or anything, which makes them actually really hard to read in-game. I don't know why this is an issue, it should be super simple to just put a stroke around them, or a grayed out box, or anything other than just white text. Next, I want to call your attention to the sliders. The subtitles slider changes by integers, but the rest of these don't. Inconsistent sliders will be a theme you'll notice. Even though these zeros after the decimal exist, sometimes they just don't matter. But who would even want to change these sliders by 0.01? You can't actually advance by that much. The arrow keys move by ones. And if you want to set your bars to the same number, say 2.5, good fucking luck, it's not happening. This is just bad design. And the same problems are in the audio menu. Who on earth sets their master volume to 37.61? None of these bars have any reason to go by smaller increments than 1. The gameplay tab is more or less fine. I like the option to disable crossplay if you want. However, you may notice that the fonts between different categories are different. Why? It just looks ugly. The next 2 tabs are keyboard and controls, which I imagine is supposed to be controller, because that's what's shown on the screen. I can't say much about the controller settings since I never played Payday 2 with a controller, but the bindings for keyboard are annoying. Many keybinds did not carry over from 2 to 3, and while that wouldn't bother new players to the series, I know several people, including me, who just had to rebind these. I can't think of a good reason to just mess with muscle memory like this, but what I found even more annoying is that there are some keys you just can't rebind. I moved my mark/shout button to F, since that's what I'm used to from Payday 2, and I noticed I kept bringing up the chat wheel. So I looked to rebind that, and that's not even an option in the settings. That's one that stood out to me, but I'm not sure if there are any more keybinds like this. Let's leave the settings now and get a look at the UI. The opening screen looks so empty. You have these two options on the side, and the rest is just empty space. There's this ugly and out-of-place social button here for whoever wants that, I don't know. At the top, you have these tabs, and wow, that's lame. Compared to Payday 2's CrimeNet, Play is just so pathetic and generic. Next to it is Loadout, which is fine, and I don't really have anything to moan about here. But next to it are vendors, where you can buy guns, masks, outfits, and special money. However, the issue is how this works with the loadout. If you buy a gun and press escape to go back to your loadout to customize it, well, it doesn't work. With these two menus being separate, going between them is so awkward. Payday 2 did this much better. You can go further into a loadout for specifics, and then just press escape to move back. There was nothing wrong with that system, so I have no idea why Payday 3 ditched it for one that works worse. Next are the challenges, which I'll talk about later, but just look at this disgusting design. There are 64 pages in the heist category alone, and you have to click through each page, one by one. Who thought this was a good idea? Payday 2's achievement menu had a scroll bar, as well as a search feature, which is absent here. The best you have is this utterly useless filter option. A fan-made website handled this better, and it's fascinating that I can say that. A fan-made website handles a challenge list better than the game. Lastly, there's a More tab, which is whatever. My problem is that you need to go here to quit the game. What was the plan? Make quitting the game take an extra step so that people would play longer? Let's go back to the loadout menu and take a look here at loadout 0. Why start at 0? No idea. Why stop at 6? No idea. You can't rename these either, so that's fantastic. Let's go deeper into the menu and look at the weapons. If you want to customize a weapon or change the cosmetics, you can't just click on it, you have to press R or T. Why? This is annoying. Why can't menus just be navigated with a mouse like in literally every other game? Now we can talk about the weapon stats in the form of bars, which is an atrocious choice. Numbers are just better. Does Starbreeze think their audience is so stupid that numbers are too complicated to read? This is an 18+ game, right? Just give us numbers, or at least the option to switch between numbers and bars. I mean, there are already numbers for the ammo count. Why nowhere else? Additionally, this makes comparing attachments a nightmare. I guess counting pixels of red and green was the intended method here. See? Look how good this attachment is. What do you mean you can't tell what it does? It's so obvious. Look closer. How about, in this wonderful spot right here, you just say what the attachment does instead of this useless garbage? What the fuck does this mean? First off, gun kick is not even a stat. Is that part of recoil? I have no idea because the game doesn't want to tell me. Second, this is just counterintuitive, because plus vertical recoil means better vertical recoil, as in less recoil, and minus horizontal recoil means worse horizontal recoil, as in more recoil. But the bar is green, so it's a net positive? Who designed these elements? They're just so incredibly bad. And gun kick isn't the only stat that isn't mentioned. It's also swap speed, targeting speed, sprint to fire speed, damage distance, and even more. I'd love for the game to at least tell you what each stat means, because I have no clue what even handling means. Recoil is a different stat, so who knows? Speaking of, recoil is a stat that gets mentioned, but accuracy isn't. I'm guessing that spread relates to accuracy, but again, why should I be guessing? There's also no consistency to where these are placed. The weapon customization menus are the worst design menus in the game by a mile, and that's a bad thing considering it sucks the fun out of build making. Whereas in Payday 2 I could sit in the customization menu for minutes at a time, weighing different options. In Payday 3 I just pick something that seems to give more green than red, and call it a day because trying to actually work out gun stats is unfun. But if you thought that was bad, well, it gets worse because there are hidden stats. You know those stats that people hated in Payday 2 because you couldn't know them without going to the wiki or using a mod? Well, they're back. You think you know what damage your gun does based on this bar, but you actually have no fucking idea. There's a hidden stat for armor penetration that actually determines your gun's damage. Aside from weapon menus, the armor lining menu gives no information about anything, and neither does the overkill weapon menu. Why? Who knows? Finally, after almost 4,000 words, we can actually talk about the game. Or at least the tutorials for now. There are 4 of them, but there should really be 2. Combine the loud and stealth tutorials together and done. I don't know why they're separate. Also, this has nothing to do with anything, but I just want to mention that I failed the crowd control tutorial the first time I played it, because I instinctively shot the civs.
Don't kill the civilians, you need them.
On the floor!
Try again.
Shit, that's lit.
Instinct. Anyway, now we're in matchmaking, and I tricked you, you idiot. I'm still talking about menus. Look at this heist selection thing. Compared to CrimeNet, it's sad. But there are also these cinematics, and you have to press R to toggle them, after every heist you play. Why? Also, why exactly are these cinematics under the Join a Heist and Matchmake tab? What if you just, I don't know, put them somewhere else? Okay, whatever, moving on. When you select a map, you get options for the lobby type and difficulty. See, although the game is always online, being able to play solo was promised. That was a lie though, because the invite-only setting works identically to the friends-only setting. You also can't turn off bots. Anyway, you finally get into a lobby after waiting on the matchmaking screen, looking at this kerning mistake where a space was just forgotten, I guess. Welcome to the world's most useless lobby. First off, no pre-planning. Why was that removed? No idea, but at least the assets are still here, available for separate purchase from the vendors. Why? There's also no lobby chat, nor an option to unready after readying, because who would want that? After everyone readies up, you get a mission briefing faster than you can ever read, and then an intro cutscene where your cursor is on screen at all times. Fantastic. You start without a mask on for all heists but one, implying that you should stealth. So, stealth. Yeah, I didn't really play stealth in Payday 2, and I don't really care enough for stealth in this game either. Let's see. I'll leave my heist real quick and go to the vendors to buy the Pro Stealth Magic School Base favor.
So you want to learn stealth, huh? Well, you have come to the right place. I am the Stealth Master 64. I have on multiple occasions broke out of my bedroom past my bedtime, managed to snuck a fart in a classroom full of girls, and they never noticed a thing. And once I even managed to have sex with a girl, and she did not even notice I was in. My less notable achievements include beating every heist there is in Payday 3 on overkill while in stealth, solo. And trust me, this is something to be proud of. Stealth, as it seems, received a lot more love than the loud gameplay. You have way more fuck-ups. You can get caught and then let go, you can get cuffed and then released, you can skip a pager, but don't be fooled, there is a catch. Multiple of those in fact. First of all, the level design sucks balls. Bollocks if you feel so inclined. The majority of the heists you'll be doing is just a box filled with guards and cameras, including the dumbest objective known to mankind, like for example catching 5G for your new feminist icon, or verifying a hard drive at the villain's hideout because we don't have a PC at home, it seems. The only good stealth heist there is the Art Gallery 2.0, except the time you want to secure bags, because you have to go through a massive group of civilians, just like in pretty much half of the stealth heists there are. You can buy a zipline to move bags slightly safer, but relying on a dumb asset that you cannot buy in the lobby to clear a heist is a little bit dumb, in my opinion. Also, if you get caught by the red guard, it's game over. No matter what you do on half of the heists, if he catches you early, you lose. And the best part is that his pathfinding is randomized, and he can wander off to the areas where he literally, physically cannot get, like a coded locked door for example. Also, if you want to solo overkill stealth, I have a surprise for you. It's close to impossible. I did all of them solo, and trust me, just because you can do them solo really doesn't mean that you should. But other than that, stealth has some pretty cool things going for it. You can distract guards now with throwing knives or Bluetooth speakers. You can put motion sensors that actually work and not just a meme like in Payday 2. You can hack cams, guards, and it is all pretty neat, but none of that matters since you won't be doing any stealth heists anyway because it grants little to no EXP.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy. You get your god.
Concise and very professional. Maybe the asset system in Payday 3 isn't that bad. No, on second thought, still bad. Now we can finally talk about loud gameplay. Although, while I've got this chance, let's talk about the UI a bit more and look at this HUD. Wow, this is a downgrade and a half from Payday 2. Let's take a look at that one to remind us what it's like. Alright, let's take some notes here. All of your info is localized to the bottom right, and is easily accessible with one quick glance. Inner circle is your health, outer circle is armor. Next to it is some more important info, your primary ammo count, secondary ammo count, and various gear. Above is the mission stuff that you've got, and your name with your assigned color. Along the rest of the bottom of the screen is your team info. Their armor, health, ammo counts, and gear are also visible at a glance, as well as any bots that you may have with you. If someone is down or in custody, it's extremely easy to see who and what their status is. You can see players through walls and identify them by name or by their color. At the top left is your objective, top middle is the clock, and top right is the assault bar, showing what difficulty you're on and whether the assault is going, as well as a civilian count. The center of the screen is where you get various alerts about your team and the mission. This HUD is, dare I say, near perfect. Sure, it's missing buff info and this down counter is a bit ugly and misplaced, but those are minor elements. The Payday 2 HUD is iconic and has almost everything you need info-wise to play the game. 9 out of 10 HUD. Now let's take a look at the Payday 3 HUD. First off, you'll notice that the HUD looks exactly the same as every other modern shooter. Gone are the iconic circles, gone are the colors, gone are the stylish elements. The objective bar is bland with an orange exclamation mark, just like in every other game ever. No more moving assault banner that says your difficulty, now there's just a police assault in dull yellow text. Your health and ammo are split across the screen, making you need to look twice for full info. How much ammo does my team have? No idea, why would I care anyway? I know what characters are playing though, which will surely help me figure out whose character model I'm looking at. The down or custody mark is a small mark next to their name, making it hard to notice since the center of the screen isn't used for alerts anymore, the chat is. On one hand, it's good that the alerts are color-coded, but on the other hand, it's completely unhelpful for a quick glance. Flicking your eyes to the chat and seeing red could mean someone is down, cloaked, or tased, and you have no idea which. Get out the reading glasses mid-combat and look harder, I guess. Having to look at the chat also makes it easy to miss when one of these events happens anyway, as well as something like a player joining or leaving the game. The chat is just bad and broken. You have to double-click your key to open it in the first place to type, but say you don't want to type and want to use the chat wheel. Enjoy looking at two different types of text. The chat also says who picked something up, but not who places it. There's also this indicator for what you're carrying, but it's weirdly spaced, and also some of the icons are hard to decipher, such as when carrying cocaine. And finally, my biggest issue with the HUD, the game reminded me how to play. I fucking hate games that do this, and it's common in these cookie-cutter modern shooters. Get these disgusting reminders off the screen, or at least have it be an option in the settings. The only good part of Payday 3's HUD are the buff markers, which honestly just look like they were lifted out of the Payday 2 mod HUD list. Payday 3's HUD is generic, lacking team info, and considers you to be so stupid that you forget the controls. But at the very least, it tells you your info well enough if you're a chameleon that can look in two directions at once. 2 out of 10 HUD. Okay, now we can talk about the gameplay. Payday 3's gameplay is much slower than Payday 2's. To be honest, that's fair. Payday 2 has extremely dynamic and fast-paced gameplay that is very difficult for new players to get used to. However, Payday 3 slows it down not in the Payday the Heist way, but rather just by being clunky. Sprinting has a noticeable acceleration and deceleration in Payday 3 as opposed to Payday 2's instant speed change. Going in and out of ADS is also slower than in Payday 2. These two elements may seem small, but you're going to sprint in ADS many times over the course of a game, and the longer you spend in those intermediary zones is less time you spend doing something else. Payday 2 felt so fast-paced because the player had such crisp and responsive control over these elements. Another thing that makes Payday 3 gameplay clunky is the removal of reload cancelling. If you start a reload, Payday 3 will make you finish that reload. You can't stop and keep shooting at will, which is pretty frustrating but also janky. Payday 3 added new movement options, the vault and the slide. I like the vault, but I think it needs to be tweaked a bit. Vaulting gives you forward momentum, which can sometimes make you fall off ledges, and fall damage in Payday 3 is brutal, so that's fun. If you want to climb a ledge for a view, you need to do this like counter-strafe thing to not fall to your death. But again, the vault is more or less fine. The slide on the other hand isn't. You can initiate a slide from a sprint or a sprint jump. Initiating it from a sprint is awful because you need to do this weird and uncomfortable motion with your pinky unless you rebind the keys for both sprinting and crouching, so I ended up never sliding out of sprint in my gameplay. Sprint jump has problems too. You go from sprinting fast to slowing down for a jump, back to speeding up during the slide. It's just awkward, and since there's no stamina, I'd rather just sprint the whole way. Sliding doesn't seem to give you a smaller hitbox than crouching, so you can't slide under trucks or anything fun like that. The slide is just always awkward, pointless, takes a lot of movement control from the player, and you can't even ADS in it. I also ended up sliding off shit to my death a couple times, since you're forced to initiate a slide unless you uncrouch as soon as you hit the ground. Movement is incredibly important to game feel, and Payday 3 doesn't really do it well. Well, whatever, how's the gunplay? Not great. From my experience, there are 3 guns in the game. The automatic gun, the single fire gun, and the shotgun. Those are not categories I'm putting them under, those are the 3 guns. I say that because every automatic gun I tried felt the same, every single fire gun felt the same, and every shotgun felt the same. Admittedly, I didn't play every weapon in the game because I didn't unlock them all, and also the pattern seemed consistent, so I don't care enough to keep trying weapons. There's also this epic overkill weapon system lifted out of Call of Duty. I never called these in, and whenever I did, it was always just to see how many I could pile up outside. There are only 2 options as of now, a grenade launcher that does more damage to yourself than to any enemy, and a sniper rifle that's actually quite nice. The sniper rifle has a nice sound and nice feel, which is something inconsistent across the rest of the weapons. Some weapon animations are great, but others aren't. Overall, the weapon animations feel too coddy and serious for my taste. This is a problem that also crept into the weapons that were added in Payday 2 near the end of the game. Let's now go over the enemies, and the first frustrating thing is that they look exactly the same on every difficulty. When you jump from Death Wish to Death Sentence, the cops start looking like this, and it feels cool as hell. In Payday 3, the jumps in difficulty are not noticeable visually. I swapped between Very Hard and Overkill a lot over my playtime, and I legit just forgot what difficulty I was on at any given point. As far as I'm concerned, there are no differences in difficulty aside from just damage. Normal and hard are basically identical, with Very Hard being a noticeable jump and Overkill being a noticeable jump again. Technically, this difficulty curve is more balanced than Payday 2, but that doesn't mean it has the same range. The hardest difficulty in Payday 3, Overkill, isn't hard. I'll talk about why and game balance later, so let's get back to enemies. There's a new special enemy, but let's go over the old ones first. Shields. They have a shield. For the most part, they're unchanged from Payday 2. However, I like that enemies will attempt to hide behind the shield for cover, and that you can shoot out the shield's glass thingy so that every good build doesn't need an anti-shield like in Payday 2. However, I really don't like their kick thing. They can do it in all directions, which is silly, and the stun itself looks goofy. Next is the taser, or zapper as it was renamed. This enemy is completely useless. It has a quirk where you can shoot the battery thing on its belt to stun everyone in the area, but since it doesn't actually kill anyone and can stun you as well, doing it is pointless. They can leave small traps around the area though, which I am a fan of. Snipers are next, and I like that they can move positions now rather than sitting in one spot forever until you cross their line of sight like in Payday 2. However, they take years to actually take their shot at you, making them very easy to deal with, unless you miss repeatedly and get all your armor taken off, which is just unfun. Cloakers are next, and I think they are the best done special enemy in Payday 3 by a wide margin. They're very easy to kill, but move fast and one-shot you. They can also cloak the last person standing, which is good, since cloakers used to be completely harmless to solo players in Payday 2. I also like that the cloakers will attempt to destroy your deployables if left unattended, though the game highlighting them as they do it is kind of silly. I think there could be more announcement as to when they spawn or when they're near you, but it's honestly not that bad. However, I'm not a fan of how they look. It's just too tryhard in my eyes. Next are the dozers, which are not good. I didn't like the look of the cloakers, but man do dozers look garbage. In Payday the Heist and Payday 2, they had these unique and intimidating designs, but in Payday 3, they almost look like a regular SWAT upscaled 15%. To be fair, they are at least threatening enough to kill you if you're alone, but they drop pretty fast otherwise, and leave behind a first aid kit. This is so silly and I have no idea why it was even added. SWAT vans aren't a thing in Payday 3, which is good because they would be atrocious for the way the game is designed in general, but they have been replaced by FBI vans with an antenna you need to shoot to end an infinite assault. It's fine, much less fun than Captain Winter's, but it's fine. The police seem to throw a flash once every 3 years, but the effect is almost useless even point blank. There are also no more smokes from the cops, which is disappointing. Smokes are a fantastic element to add, as not knowing what's behind it provides a lot of tension, but there are gas grenades. They come from the new Nader enemy, who is okay. His gas is pretty deadly, but also quite easy to avoid in most cases. Shooting his grenade belt actually does something, unlike the taser, so that's cool. Special enemies altogether are rarer than they were in Payday 2, but they aren't dangerous enough to validate it. Payday 2's special enemies were super weak, but frequent enough to where they could cause problems. Payday 3's special enemies show up rarely, and then don't do anything. Except for the Cloaker, which will at least take one person down with him. Let's talk about balance in Payday 3, or I guess it would be better to say the lack of balance. Loud gameplay in Payday 3 lives and dies by the armor bag. Payday 3 chose to abandon the armor system from the Heist in 2, where you had a regenerative shield for your health, and replaced it with a big shield that doesn't come back. Well, it does, but slowly and always at a net loss. You can play as well as you want, your armor will still be whittled down scratch by scratch until you're naked. This removes risk and reward from the game entirely, and also just clamps player skill. The best player in the world would lose to a mediocre player 10 out of 10 times if the mediocre one just brings an armor bag, the strongest deployable in the game without contest. Since your armor is designed to eventually go down, and your health gets torn apart fast, if you bring anything other than an armor bag, you're hurting yourself and your team. All in all, the armor system being different isn't the issue, the atrocious balance is. If the system were balanced, that would be better, but I still wouldn't really like it because of how much it slows the game down. It's fine to like, but it's just not my style. I bought the game Ocho at about the same time as Payday 3, and I've put more hours into it. The gameplay of Ocho is... slightly faster paced than Payday 3. Weapons are all ammo efficient, so there's no good reason to bring an armor bag. The medic bag restores health, but health is completely useless without armor, so why would you ever pick that? A sentry gun could be cool on lower difficulties if you want, but taking one on overkill means you didn't bring armor, which means you're hurting the team. Listen to this clip from Mio talking about the armor meta.
So right now the game favors armor, and we knew launching that the current state of the game is more armor focused. We have identified what the issue there is. We feel that it's because players don't have enough sources of armor. So we have first aid kits that you can get, which are lesser heals, and we have ammo containers in security rooms, which are lesser armor pickups. But we don't have a source of lesser armor repair, so we are looking into that. We have discussed it internally in design, and we hope to fix it. I don't know at which point, but we don't think that the issue is with armor being overpowered. Armor is not going to be nerfed, but we will look into ways to make health more valuable. I would just say until then, enjoy the armor meta, but we will be looking to change it up and rebalance it as with most aspects of the game.
The team thinks the reason armor bags are meta is because there's no lesser armor source, but the problem is just how armor works entirely. If you don't have armor, your health will be destroyed. Using a first aid kit or medic bag changes nothing, you're still going to die. Adding lesser armor sources to the game won't change people taking armor bags, and unless you can survive without armor, the armor bag will stand far above the other deployables. I mentioned dozers dropping first aid kits, and you can also trade civilians for them during assault breaks, and it's, unsurprisingly, pretty useless. On top of health not meaning much compared to armor, what you should be doing is trading civs at the beginning of the game. This delays the assault and allows you to spend more time without your armor being shot at. You could keep a civ or two around to hold as hostage, but in my experience it seems pretty unhelpful. Some cop will always run up to and melee you, leaving you stunned and in a worse position than before. However, I have seen this be absurdly powerful from other people's gameplay, straight up disabling cops from doing anything. Killing civs also has no penalty, since unlike in Payday 2, it doesn't really do anything for your custody timer. Sure, it costs some money, but just like in Payday 2, you earn money so fast that it'll never be a concern. In fact, custodying in Payday 3 is a reward. Going down and being revived gets you up without any armor, meaning you're going to die again very soon. So, instead of teammates risking their armor to help up someone who's effectively marked for death, they can let you custody and come back in a minute with armor. I don't know how the custody system was made worse than in Payday 2, but it somehow was. Following the broken deployable balance, it's pretty clear the armor balance is broken too. Just pick the highest armor. There's no reason to pick the other ones because the speed you get is negligible, and also why would you want less armor? The throwable balance is strange. Throwable animations are all bad in their own ways, but that's unimportant. The grenade seems to not do enough damage to kill unless it's inside the hitbox of cops. The knife can't be picked up without skill investment, so it's basically useless. The flashbang is nice, and smoke is also fine. Weapon balance I'm not 100% confident on, because there aren't any numbers anywhere, so it's hard to compare things. However, single-fire weapons, or at least auto ones that can one-shot enemies, feel leagues stronger than basic auto-fire, which is a shame since I prefer auto weapons in games. The shotguns are just bad, so that's fun. The secondary balance is pretty bad too. There's no reason to use anything other than the Castigo. You are also only allowed to use pistols for your secondary, which is lame. The melee, well, you only have one option. Unlike Payday 2, The Payday 3 melee system just exists as a stagger to enemies. It does no damage, so the best you can do is stagger enemies and hope your reload finishes in time. It's useless. There are also these new gadgets, but I think they're stealth only because I couldn't get them to do anything during loud gameplay that seemed of use to anyone. Well, time to talk about skills. Payday 3 skills are in lines as opposed to trees, and the way you build up through them is different too. I'm not really against it. I think it's less interesting than the trees in Payday 2 since you had to spend a certain number of points to reach a skill you wanted, which meant you need to consider how to best spend your points as opposed to just taking whatever you want. Payday 3's skills all rely around edge, grit, and rush, which is just silly. If you really want to see why, replace all their mentions in the skills with their buffs. For example, the tank aced skill is whenever a chunk of armor breaks, gain grit. Sounds cool, right? Well, what it means is whenever a chunk of armor breaks, gain temporary 10% damage resistance. Much lamer now, right? The skills in general are all lame. Payday 2 had 90 skills with a basic and aced option for each, and Payday 3 has 105 with only 17 aceable ones. If I were to tally up filler skills for each, which is to say pointless skills or those with benefits that are just a minor bump to a stat, I'd say Payday 2 has 51 fillers and Payday 3 has 74 fillers, and that's being generous because realistically, every skill relating to medic bags, ammo bags, and sentry guns are also useless because they're not armor bags. This is felt even more because of how the skill trees work. In Payday 2, sure, there are skills you'd never take by themselves, but sometimes you just have to take them to get to the skill above. In Payday 3, you can straight up ignore those skills. Payday 3 builds revolve around edge and armor, and a smidge of grit if you feel like it. Everything else will never ever be taken by someone looking to perform well. There's no variety to builds in Payday 3 at all, since every build is just a highest armor available plus armor bag skills setup. And you don't really get the weapon variety illusion either, because so many weapons just perform identically. Clearly, the skills are not even remotely balanced if so many of them are useless, but they're also unbalanced in an unfun way. Payday's skills weren't balanced, but at least they were fun. 1 minute of infinite ammo, massive body shot damage, a radius of death from sniper rifles, long range reviving, and more are all extremely powerful, but at least they're fun. Payday 3's unbalanced skills are just, you do X a tiny bit better. You get something so situational that it never happens. Or you're actively hurting yourself having the skill. Woohoo. Well, you finished a map, and it's time to rake in all your experience to level up. Except some bumblefuck decided that the only way to level up is through challenges. This means that unless you're grinding challenges, simply playing the game is extremely unrewarding. Well, technically, the challenges are designed to be stuff you get over time, but eventually you run out of those common challenges and are left with the fun option of sitting in a bathroom for hours just shooting into crowds. This progression system means that playing the way you want to will eventually hit a wall, and when you run out of relevant challenges, to progress, you'll have to start jumping through hoops. Literally. If you want to frustrate players, this is a fantastic system. The progression system is what caught the most complaints, next to the broken servers and lack of offline mode. There are so many posts across the forums and Reddit about how it's demotivating to finish a mission and get fucking nothing for it. But hey, at the very least you can fail a map and get XP from that, right? It's baffling that there's not even mission XP in Payday 3. The goal of this system was allegedly to not have people farm one map over and over for experience, but the end result, well, aside from people not wanting to play the game at all, was that people sit in a bathroom for hours doing fuck all. This is so much more fun than just playing the game, right? And even then, the system completely fails because there are these stupid challenges like complete a map 100 times in stealth and complete it in loud 100 times. Seriously? Who signed off on this? In Payday 2, seeing someone who was high level meant that they played the game for a long time, or at the very least farmed a lot assuming they didn't cheat. Seeing a high level player in Payday 3 means that they sat there and spent their time sliding 500,000 meters, or running through more doors than you. There are also a ton of challenges related to weapons, which have a frustrating system on their own. When you unlock a weapon, it's at the lowest level. To level it up, you have to use that weapon in combat, and that unlocks attachments for the gun. But why the hell would I ever choose to use a gun without attachments, just to level it up when I can use a perfectly normal gun that performs exactly the same, feels the exact same, and allows me to use a scope? There's a good reason everyone used the 99 boxes exploit to level up their weapons. Would you like to use this gun now, or this pen cartridge launcher? Maybe the pen cartridge launcher will level up and you could put a stock on it. You never know. This is a terrible system that leads to people not having any reason to use a new weapon. Even dumber is that after you level up the weapon to unlock the weapon mods, you have to buy them. Not that money matters, but what's the deal with this extra step? The final tiers also require you to spend C-stacks as well, which you can buy from the weekly money dealer. My bet is that C-stacks will eventually be needed for more than just weapon mods, and then the devs will slap those into the microtransaction system that will totally only be used for cosmetics. While we're on cosmetics, let's talk about those. Weapon customization is okay, I guess. The colors and patterns work how they should, but the stickers seem basically invisible. There's also no weapon inspect button, so you can't really even customize for the sake of seeing things yourself. There are weapon charms, but I didn't use them in Payday 2 since I couldn't see them, and I can't really see them in Payday 3 either. You can't give guns names, like in Payday 2, so you're stuck with the default names that just suck ass. In Payday 2, you had striking names, iconic guns like the Judge, Eagle Heavy, Cavity, Platypus, Yzma, Brenner, and on and on. Payday 3 gun names, on the other hand, FIC PC-9, SA A144, Reinfeld 900S, KU-59. I mean, come on. Atrocious. The glove and outfit customization is fine, but the mask customization isn't. A lot of people are complaining that there aren't enough options, but my issue is that the masks are just not very good looking. They protrude weirdly on the character models, so even a mask that might look good just doesn't. The character models themselves are fine, and the only weird looking pose is the crouched one. The heisters just look way too close to the floor. Let's talk about those heisters as well, since they are a cosmetic of sorts. The crew should be aged up in this game compared to the last one, since time has apparently passed. But the only one that looks older is Wolf. Hoxton looks younger, and also not even remotely like Hoxton. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a reveal that it was Houston all along, just like with Payday 2. There's also the brand new heister, Pearl. She's fine. The voice actor does well, but the lines just aren't it. I can really just expand that to all the characters though. The voice work from the VAs is good, but the writing isn't. The characters themselves are less alive than Payday 2. They barely sound like they're having fun robbing things, they don't quip at each other, and they're just not very interesting to project onto. But I can't talk about voice acting in Payday 3 without talking about Shade, the worst attempt at replacing Bane or Locke I've ever seen. The biggest fucking issue with fucking Shade is that she fucking swears every 2 fucking seconds in every fucking line. You don't need to be a fucking genius to figure out that fucking talking like this is annoying as fuck, and sounds like a fucking child wrote what they fucking think adults talk like. Talking like that doesn't make you sound like a calm and collected criminal mastermind, it makes you sound like a moron. Bane was a professional who always had everything under control, and even when he didn't, he would make a joke, and you could feel that somehow everything would work out. Shade is nothing like that. She sounds like she has no control over any situation, panicking every time anything happens. Her lines are unfunny, aren't clever, and she lacks any unique personality. I want to shoot myself every time I hear her say, "I smell bacon." That was the best the writers could come up with? Awful. Even AI-generated lines sound better. I also hate the cop voice lines. Over and over, it's just talk about kill boxes, and put them in a kill box, and box them in and kill them. It's just so repetitive. Bring back the goat fucks in the AO, or at least something fun of that sort. The last thing I want to talk about are the maps this game has. There are 8 at the moment, and people have put in their complaints. The most common complaint is that there just aren't enough maps, and while I can see why people feel that way, I don't really have any issue with it. Could there have been more? Yeah, but the game released in an unfinished state, as I'm sure you've picked up throughout this video. There are tons of issues and systems that are straight up untested and bad, so I'm not surprised at the lack of maps. My complaint is that the maps aren't good in themselves. From my perspective, there's only one original map, 99 boxes, and it's the worst fucking heist in the game by a long shot. Let's start with that one, why not? 99 boxes starts with you breaking into a compound. You need to put some coolant in this truck for whatever product you're putting in there, and then you need to go actually get that product. Well, the product is inside these white shipping containers that you need to burn through to open, but that's not all. You then need to deal with the worst objective in the game. Considering Payday 3 is an action game, it makes perfect sense that the objectives involve you standing still and doing nothing. The stand still in circles to get Wi-Fi signal is zero fun, and for some reason gets used across the entire game. This is the only unique objective in Payday 3 compared to Payday 2, by the way, and it's this bad. I had the luxury of always playing the game with someone else in a voice call, or at the very least on stream with chat, so the circles weren't so bad, but this would be unbearable alone and in pubs.
You have 30 seconds until the assault. Great work. Now, grab...
After that fantastic gameplay, you get the stuff inside, and once you secure it, you get to do it again, because it was so fun the first time. Awful. There would be no reason to play this map at all if it wasn't bugged and let you skip leveling up weapons in the intended way. 1 out of 10. Let's talk about Harvest and Trustee Bank next. That's not the actual name of the map, but I'll just be using the names of Payday 2 maps since I can't remember the ones in Payday 3. The maps aren't one-to-one, obviously, but based on the vibes and flow of the map, a lot of them feel extremely similar to Payday 2 maps. To be fair, this one is forgivable since it's just a basic bank heist and an intro to the game, but the rest are tough to excuse. This map starts with setting up thermite and waiting. Just stop the police from turning on water and get inside the vault as soon as the thermite is done. Here, you have to remove dye packs from the money. This is a pain in the ass, and luckily it never comes back in the rest of the heists. You then need to carry all your money to the escape in a different street. It's kinda whatever. This map is better than 99 boxes, but the best I can give it is 5 out of 10 for being just passing. The next map is Transport Green Bridge. This is the one loud-only map in the game so far, and it's quite decent even. You need to escort this truck to a location where you'll saw into it. Then you get to lockpick the boxes inside. Do you see what I mean by the maps not being especially original? Stay by the truck to get it to move forward. Same as the Green Bridge prisoner escort, and then it's literally just a transport heist. Move the bags and escape, and it's over. I think this map has some interesting designs, but it's held down by, again, being nothing new. 6 out of 10. Next is Diamond Store. This map is really as basic as it gets in Payday 3. You start the map, signal for an escape helicopter, and then just hoard jewelry until the escape arrives. There's really not a whole lot to this map. There's a safe you can crack, and the safe cracking is different from Payday 2, where you just sit and lockpick. I don't know if I'd call it better, since it's quite buggy and sometimes shows a green lock when you're nowhere near the right number, but the lockpicking in general for Payday 3 is certainly better than Payday 2. You have the option to clean jewelry to make it worth more, I guess, but I feel like that exists just so you have something to do while waiting for the helicopter. It's also worth noting that this map is contracted by a reanimated corpse. Don't like the phrasing of that? Well, I don't like that the Butcher was brought back for this. It feels insulting, even if the family signed off on it. I don't know why the Butcher was brought back above someone like Locke, but I think the game would have been better with an entirely new cast anyway. Shade could have all new contacts, or something interesting like that, but no. A real nothing burger of a map. 3 out of 10. Next is Nightclub. This map has you drill into a secret area to steal various goodies from the club. I just want to say that I don't like the drill redesign for Payday 3. It's so small and meek. You're telling me this thing is drilling a door open? I'd rather just shoot the hinges off. You know, although there isn't much to this map, I'm fond of it. I'm also a sucker for purple, and this nightclub is filled with the so-called bisexual lighting. 7 out of 10, a map I'd play on my own time if I felt like playing Payday 3. Next is Art Gallery, which is the best map so far, because it has the return of our favorite objective: stand in a circle like an imbecile. After that, you steal some paintings, of which some require scanning to make sure it's correct or whatever. Then you go and secure the paintings in a helicopter on the roof. I found this map annoying to play, and the different exhibit rooms all feel identical, so I kept getting lost, but I guess that's a skill issue. Also, for a map with 3 floors, it's interesting how completely useless the first floor is. Unless it's not useless, and every time I played it, the map RNG just made it useless. 2 out of 10. Big Bank is next, the community favorite map. This map is also great because there are more circles to collect Wi-Fi so Shade can hack into computers. But first, you need to open the gate. Then, after unlocking the door, you need to drill into a vault with the Beast. Or whatever this drill is called. I don't care, it comes in 3 parts, it's the Beast. After feeding it a couple cans of oxygen, you get into the vault and steal money in a server. I think there's a lore reason for taking the server, but I didn't watch any of those cutscenes, and I don't really plan to. Payday doesn't have a story. It was just a bunch of shit an intern slapped together in Payday 2, since it was just in the game. I'm not particularly interested in the story of Payday 3 because it probably involves a lot of Shade. But hey, if Noli releases a video on it, I'll still watch. Anyway, secure the stuff in the helicopter and get out of there. Although this map is loved by the community, it has the awful circle objective, and every time I think about playing it, I just don't want to. 4 out of 10. Our final map is Framing Frame Day 3. You start this map looking for a master bedroom, followed by some more of our favorite circles. You then break into a room with thermite to unlock some stuff. Get into a vault and figure out the password for a different vault, or just guess it if you want. For some reason, the keypads in Payday 3 highlight which keys are required, making it very easy to just guess and check passwords to skip objectives, or even just get lucky. But beyond that, map RNG is locked as soon as you start, which means you can restart a map and just use the passwords you found last time to skip sections, which is just stupid. Anyway, you get into the second vault and grab a hard drive that you need to hack on location and then escape with. I'd say this map even has a good layout, but it's ruined by the stupid circle objective. 5 out of 10. And those are all the maps. They're just nothing special, and playing them multiple times feels the exact same. The only map difference I noticed from RNG was just where the helicopter spawns on Diamond Store. I'm sure there are more, but they're small and unnoticeable. The maps in Payday 3 have a new system with environmental hazards you can shoot to kill cops, but they just don't seem useful, and I forget that they're even there until the warning sign comes up. Like I said, my issue with maps in Payday 3 isn't the lack of them, but rather that they're just uninteresting. I'm guessing, and hoping, that this is just the case that the first maps in the game are going to be meh, and build up to grander and more fun maps. Kinda like Payday 2. Go back and look at the maps that were there on release. They were pretty meh too. They were still better than the maps in Payday 3, but I'll give the benefit of the doubt here. Well, that's just about everything I have to say for Payday 3. Like I said, the game is unfinished, so I advise against buying it for now. So many systems are half-baked and poorly implemented. The balance is nowhere to be found, and there's nothing particularly unique about the game either. It just feels like a modern shooter with some Payday characters in it. Hardly a Payday game. But even if it wasn't like that, until an offline mode is added, I still can't recommend the game. Is the game bad? Well, it's hard to say. Payday 2 was pretty bad, but it was still lots of fun and filled to the brim with content. Payday 3 is lacking content so far, and I don't really find the gameplay loop fun either. There are also some issues I couldn't fit anywhere, so I might as well say them now. The rubber banding is worse in Payday 3 than in 2. I don't know why, but in Payday 3 you get constantly fucked with if your internet isn't great, as opposed to Payday 2 where you just stop being shot until your internet returns. Not only does this happen in public games, but since the game requires you to join a server even if you're playing alone, you can get atrocious ping in a lobby by yourself. There's a bug that forces you to sit on the matchmaking screen, even when everyone is ready, and there's no unready option, so that's awesome. There's no way to mark lobby tactic, so you could have 3 people trying to stealth when a loud player joins and makes the game go loud. So then the 3 stealth players try to restart to try again, but can't because restarting requires a mutual vote and the loud player is perfectly satisfied with going loud. So then they try to kick him, and there's no option to kick players. This is truly an improvement over peer-to-peer hosting. And even if a game does go smoothly and you want to keep playing with the people you just met, well, you can't. The entire lobby gets annihilated after finishing. This may not seem like a big deal, but I met so many incredible people in Payday 2 through just being in the same lobby and playing several games back-to-back while chatting shit in-game. I would probably not have made Payday videos if the people I met in TSD weren't so much fun to play with and be around, and new players will not have this opportunity. The game is not fun to play solo on higher difficulties because, even though the bots drop supplies for you, the lack of armor bags is annoying. Additionally, it seems like the bots are scaled in a way such that they're unkillable on very hard, but die immediately on overkill, and are bugged to sometimes be unrevivable. You also can't control the bots, even basic stuff like calling them to you or telling them to stay. There's also the fact that the only objective that requires teammates to finish faster, the circle one, becomes even less fun to do alone. Steam doesn't tell you the status of your friends when they play the game. Payday 2 used to be fun to look at because you'd see who's in what heist, and who's playing with who, and what difficulties people are on. Payday 3 just shows Payday 3. I hate how pathetic the security guards are in the game, especially when compared to Payday 2's security guards who could murder you from across the map if they wanted to. I don't know how they're coded, but I've seen some security guards in Payday 3 shoot me once or twice and then put their hands up without me doing anything. It just feels stupid. Civilians are just less fun to shoot. It's been found that a ton of stuff in Payday 3 was either outsourced or seems to just come from templates. In and of itself, I don't have a problem with that, but what exactly did Starbreeze do themselves in this game? There's also art made with AI in the game, which drains whatever respect I had left. So is the game dead forever? Despite the player numbers, not yet, I don't think so. The game looks pretty enough with the new engine, but it's just missing every single quality of life feature imaginable, as well as harboring some terrible systems. There are a lot of different systems in the game, but there are a lot of ones that are just worse than in Payday 2. Whoever is making the big decisions in the game, be it the higher-ups at Starbreeze, Deep Silver, Plaion, or even the shareholders, are making every mistake imaginable. The deciding factor for Payday 3 will be when the DLC will be released, as well as when microtransactions are introduced. When the DLC releases, everyone will return to take a look, and if the DLC is good and the devs ironed out all the unfinished parts of the game, Payday 3 will at the very least be a decent or good game with an off launch. But if the DLC is bad and there are still issues, combined with the money-hungry microtransactions, well, Payday 3 might go down as the biggest gaming disaster of 2023. Starbreeze will probably be ruined by their own greed making Payday 3, and the company will dissolve. Either that or they go back to old reliable and make more DLC for Payday 2.